Welcome, everybody, back to There Will Be Bets. This is the first round of the NFL playoffs. It's the wild card round. On top of that, it is the semifinal of the college football playoffs. A massive 5 days of football coming up for everybody, and we're here to break it all down. I am your host, Cole Oxane. As always, I'm joined by Jake LaSalle and Drew LaSalle, my co-hosts, and we are excited for what is arguably a top 3, maybe top 2 weekend in all of sports this weekend. We're football guys, so this is just through and through one of our types of weekends where we just get 5 straight days of nothing but meaningful win or go home football, and we're really, really excited to break it all down. This episode, we're going to have one round of best bets, only one because we only have 6 NFL games to break down this week. We'll cover each one of those NFL playoff games, and we're going to cover both of those college football playoff games too for you, so that way every game you're watching this weekend, we've got analysis, we've got picks, and we've got what you need to know before we get there. As always, we're going to start with some storylines, and really the storyline segment this week is going to be a roundup of what we saw on Black Monday, the day that NFL teams fire their coaches after the end of the regular season. As we sit here recording today, there are 7 teams who have fired their head coach either during the season or on Black Monday. That would be the Titans, the Ravens, the Giants, the Falcons, the Raiders, the Browns, and the Cardinals. So that's 7 new open jobs, some very notable, some we're not quite sure what's going to happen because it's not really the most desirable situation. We're going to kind of cover some of the big situations we got going on here, and we really want to start with the big name that was let go after the horrendous, heart-wrenching Sunday night loss to the Steelers, and that is John Harbaugh from the Ravens. We covered this last week, kind of called it a win or leave town game for both Tomlin and Harbaugh, but I think we're a little surprised to see the Ravens actually pulled the trigger. Guys, I don't know what your take on this is. I know my take is that maybe this was an unavoidable end to the season if that's the way they went out. But Jake, what's your take on the situation, especially as a Steelers fan who won the win or leave town game? How are you feeling looking at this situation?
Yeah, we mentioned it last week. We thought it was whichever coach lost is probably going to be out the door. I think that this is long overdue. I've mentioned it a couple of times in previous weeks on the podcast. He's had multiple games this year where coaching has been the difference between the loss. The Patriots one in particular is one that comes to mind. Also, that game in general, now you could say like, oh, he lost his job on a missed kick. There were multiple points in that game where the Ravens had many chances to lose. There was a goal line stop at the end of the half. Boswell missed an extra point to even give them an opportunity for the field goal to be a win versus going to overtime. So it wasn't just that at the end of the day. I think we were the better team in that game, and I think that this has just been long overdue. He's had 8 seasons in a row with a 2-time MVP that he has just flopped, and I think that it's his time. He's ready. Bye-bye.
Yeah, Drew, I know you feel a little differently about this. I think a little bit of Jake's take is some Steelers pride, let's say, and I'm sure he's happy, right, that it's going to mean turmoil for the Ravens, and a new coach hire means the potential to miss on it, and things could get even worse. So what's your take as somebody who's not a fan inside the division necessarily, but somebody who obviously is following the league very closely? What do you see, and do you think Harbaugh is basically going to have his choice of any of these openings if he wants them this year?
Absolutely, yeah. I as Jake was talking, I'm just thinking about the candidates that the Ravens are going to have as options, and it's I wouldn't say it's bleak, but it's certainly not last year's class with Ben Johnson, with Mike Vrabel, like these marquee names that are so sought after. There's definitely some interesting names out there, but I think John Harbaugh is going to be top of the line for just about anybody else of those 6 other teams that have openings. And we talked about it offline. I mean, be careful what you wish for, Baltimore. Like it's hard to get a coaching hire right 2 times in a row. You can have your issues with how John Harbaugh's tenure ended and some of the things that he came up short on with Lamar, but they've been one of the most winning franchises in the NFL for the last 15 to 20 years since he took over. So it's really hard to follow up with that. And I'll add this too. So it's great that the Steelers won. They're great that they're making a playoff, going to the playoffs, maybe get a first round win against the Texans. Maybe it's a better thing for the Ravens that they reset with Lamar. They get in an offensive mind to pair with him, and the Steelers are going to be stuck with Mike Tomlin going forward. Not that that's the worst thing ever, but I feel like it's just the same old noise every season. They get to a midway point with the Steelers and things are going a little south and people are calling for Mike Tomlin's head, and we're just going to have that same exact story play out next year, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think you might be onto something there with the whole mid-career reset thing. It's worked for a lot of quarterbacks in the past. I think obviously it requires the Ravens to nail the hire, but I think long term it actually could end up being more of a nightmare for the people who might be celebrating it, whether it's in the division or even just people who are fans of other powerhouse AFC teams right now. I know I've seen some happy fans out of Buffalo as well, just because that's one of the teams that they always have to go up against, and they're kind of hoping that maybe this is the mark of another down year or two for the Chiefs and the Ravens, giving them a longer runway. But again, we've seen things turn fast. I know that, you mentioned a guy like Ben Johnson might not be out there, but what happens if the Ravens find their version of Ben Johnson and we see a turnaround the same way we saw one year the Bears have a down year and then are immediately back into what is a 2 seed potential, top of a conference team? That could be a dangerous situation, especially with a guy like Lamar there. And obviously there's other talent on the roster too. And the other good news for the Ravens is this means Zach Orr's gone too. It means they can go ahead and they could find their new defensive coordinator too, so they kind of get that full reset. One other note before we move on to the other head coaches, do you think it's kind of funny? The Ravens and the Steelers, both are franchises notable for their lack of coaching turnover. The Ravens, obviously a much younger franchise since they were technically a startup back in the 90s after the whole debacle when the Browns left Cleveland. But Harbaugh was only their third coach, same as Tomlin is only the Steelers' third coach. So this is kind of a historical firing in a certain sense, too. It's very interesting, especially in the next couple of years if we eventually see Tomlin on the hot seat, too. That these are some faces we've seen in that division for a long time. And with Stefanski, we're going to talk about next, out of the division too. And let's be honest, Zach Taylor, he survived this year. Not much long for the world in Cincinnati. This division could look a whole lot different in a couple years. But like I said, that's going to lead us into the other big, probably maybe the second best coach that was let go, depending on your opinions of current Pete Carroll, that was let go in this round of coach firings is Kevin Stefanski on his way out of Cleveland. Drew, I know you potentially think he makes a lot of sense in Atlanta, but what's your feeling on that? Why is that? Do you think that he's another hot name other than Harbaugh that's going to really get his pick this round?
Yeah, completely. I think that situation in Cleveland kind of got to a point where him and the GM Andrew Berry really just were not seeing eye to eye, and sounds like Jimmy Haslam ultimately opted to go with Andrew Berry, and they let Stefanski go, which it's crazy. I mean, for a franchise as sorry as the Cleveland Browns, to have a guy who won Coach of the Year twice, won a playoff game for you after years of just absolute dumpster fire teams, it's pretty disappointing to see Stefanski get let go. But I picked out Atlanta as something that I think would be a really good fit for him. I know they have kind of a question mark with how they want to proceed at quarterback, and he obviously has a bit of history with Kirk Cousins, but I think they readjusted Cousins' contract so that they're going to probably let him go this summer and focus all their attention on Penix. I do think that this is kind of a good situation for Stefanski to jump into. That's a team that has a loaded roster. They upgraded their pass rush in the last draft, even though they don't have a first rounder in this next year's draft. I think that's a team that could honestly really set themselves up well in that division, with the Bucks kind of on the decline, deciding to keep Todd Bowles, it seems like, for the time being. And even though we all like Canales, I think that division is ripe for the taking, and that'd be a great spot for Stefanski.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think Kevin Stefanski, as you said, has proven that he is an elevator of rosters. He might not necessarily have ever achieved the highest heights. Again, I think that's more a display of what Cleveland gave him to work with. But he has proven that he can set a floor that is higher given a modicum of talent. It doesn't even have to be an incredible amount of talent. Baker had his limitations when he was in Cleveland, and then even he made the playoffs with Joe Flacco. One of those years he was the coach of the year. Obviously, he had a decent defense and was working with different levels of talent on offense every year. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think his style, especially his offensive style, would play well with the talent that they have in Atlanta. They like to run the ball in those Stefanski schemes. He would love to have those two running backs they have in Atlanta. They have a good offensive line. Drake London, better than any receiver he ever had to work with in Cleveland. So I think offensively, I think Atlanta makes a lot of sense. Jake, How do you feel? Do you think Stefanski might be looking maybe elsewhere, somewhere like New York? What do you think? And or maybe in general, do you think he's worth this acclaim, or do you think that there's other guys that we should be looking more attention to? How do you feel about Stefanski? And again, as a fan of the division, are you happy? You sad? How you feeling on this one?
I agree with everything you guys are saying. A little bit happy that he's out of the division because I think Stefanski's a great coach. I don't think he was the problem in Cleveland. I think there are far deeper issues at play in Cleveland than the coaching. And I think Atlanta's a really good fit for him. I think the offense in Atlanta is very strong and very talented, and I feel like he could do very well there. So yeah, I think that like Stefanski going to Atlanta makes a lot of sense. I also wanted to go back to what you were saying with Todd Bowles and Zach Taylor, two coaches that didn't get fired that we mentioned last week and a couple other weeks that we thought could be on their way out the door. I was a little surprised with that. I honestly thought that the AFC North was going to see, like, if I had to pick anybody out of the four coaches in the AFC North to get fired, I would think him, and two of the other better coaches got fired instead. So I was very surprised by that. And then the Todd Bowles, I understand he won the last game, but the writing should be on the wall. I don't understand that decision.
On the note of the Bengals, it might strictly be as simple as that franchise is just so damn cheap that they're going to let Zach Taylor coach out the contract they've given him, and they'll make that decision when the time comes. And with the Buccaneers, we had said it last week, they'd given him a vote of confidence. Usually that's not a good thing. I guess the vote of confidence was enough. They saw enough. I could have seen maybe a world where when you see a name like Harbaugh come on the market that, maybe later in the week, and it still is possible later this week, the Buccaneers decide to make a change, go all in if they think they can get a guy like Harbaugh, because it was a piece of news that came out, obviously fed from Harbaugh's agent, so you don't necessarily know, but Adam Schefter did say that even though there were 6 openings besides the Ravens, 7 teams said they were interested in interviewing Harbaugh, meaning either a playoff team or a team to yet fire their coach is also interested in John Harbaugh. So with a name like that out there, it is possible we could still see some shakeup. Again, probably not the Bengals. Don't see them having the money for that, but maybe it's a team like the Buccaneers. Maybe it's one of these teams in the playoffs, depending on what happens in a place like Pittsburgh. Or, there could be a couple of other teams. I know it's been rumored that if the Bills fall flat, that maybe Sean McDermott finds his way out of town as well. So we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, the coaching carousel is not done. No one has taken a job as we speak yet. So it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out. One other thing we did mention when talking about Stefanski is the synergy between head coaches and front office. And one team that fired their head coach weeks and at this point months ago, it's the New York Giants, but one notable name sticking around is Joe Schoen, their general manager, who most famous for the bungling of the Saquon Barkley deal, but you could go on and on with a laundry list of horrible decisions he's made for the Giants throughout the years. I know we're all surprised that they have kept him around and Dable is gone, and they're going to just roll with letting a GM pick his coach. That's usually not a recipe for success. The Giants, not known for a lot of recipes for success as of recent. Drew, I know you're the one who brought this to our attention. I know you're kind of questioning this decision. It's a real head scratcher. What's your take? And do you think Joe Schoen is really just around for one more year, or are the Mariners truly off the deep end?
I think everything is falling on Jackson Dart to save his job at this point. I think we talked about during the season that Brian Daboll was just trying to hitch his wagon to Jackson Dart in the hopes that it would save his job. Obviously, that didn't happen. But whatever Joe Schoen did inside the front office with the Mara family, he was able to convince them that they had all seen enough, and that, in fairness, if Jackson Dart is a hit, that's a fantastic pick for him, probably the best of his tenure as GM, because there was not a lot of belief, myself included, that Jackson Dart was going to be a successful NFL quarterback, and we're 8-9 games into his career, so there's a lot more to see, but I think everything is on Jackson Dart's shoulders as far as his job security is concerned.
Yeah, it's starting to feel like that. Now, Jake, let me ask you, do you think that this Giants job is a premier job for maybe a guy like Harbaugh or any of these coaches looking for work, or even a coordinator who's looking to make that jump? Because they have Jackson Dart, who probably out of all of the available situations has the most upside at the quarterback position. Maybe you could argue the Raiders because they have the number 1 pick and therefore Mendoza, Dante Moore, whoever they want, they can have. But do you think that this Giants job should be kind of the cream of the crop in this coaching class, or do you think that it's just too toxic that even if there's potential there, you shouldn't want to go near it? What's your take on this? How do you feel about the Giants if they hire the right guy?
Yeah, I don't know about like the best opportunity of the jobs available. You could make arguments for probably the Falcons, but I do think the Giants are like one of the top contenders for like good teams to go. They have a lot of young talent. Obviously, most of them were hurt this year. Scatabo got hurt. Neighbors got hurt. A lot of young defensive talent too that's just coming up in the league. So they've been really building this team for the past 5 years, and I think they've actually made some tremendous progress. And like you said with Dart, if Dart really didn't have anybody to throw the ball to, and obviously the running game got crippled. You can't really look at what he did towards the end of the year as harshly because he just had so many injuries on the offensive side of the ball. So I think it would be actually a good destination. You get a good coach in there, you get another early draft pick. I think that this team could be a very solid team and could be a scary team in the future, near future.
For sure. And I think that this team, given the right offensive mind, I think they have to go offensive mind because of the fact that it all kind of hinges on the success of Dart and Malik Neighbors coming back healthy and Cam Scatabo coming back healthy. I think you have to get an offensive mind in there, coach. I probably expect them to go offense in the draft as well. I think that you could see them try to go get another receiver, bring in someone like Carnell Tate. I think maybe they trade back and go for a later wide receiver somewhere else. Maybe they do go defense, or they could go offensive line as well. But I would tend to believe that offensive minded is going to be the best bet for this team. I think Stefanski would fit there as well if he doesn't end up in a place like Atlanta. I think this would be another good fit. I think it would fit his scheme pretty well. But I think this is one of those jobs that we could see an offensive coordinator take a shot at as well. I think a guy like Joe Brady in Buffalo, kind of do the Buffalo to New York train all over again like they did with Dable the first time could make some sense. And I think even maybe a hire we're not expecting could make some sense too if you're the Giants and really just take a shot on an offensive mind. So we'll see what happens there. The one thing that we're certain of is that if this team does not perform, probably in the next 2 years, if not next year, Joe Shane's probably on his way out, and we're going to just see the carousel continue to go where coaches and GMs come in and come out and come in and come out, and the Giants fans are kind of just stuck in this weird purgatory situation.
Yeah, but to his credit, on the offensive side of the ball, they have done pretty well in the draft. I mean, Scatabo was definitely a shot in the dark. Not a lot of people thought he had what it took to take the step in the NFL. And he looked fantastic. Malik Neighbors, obviously there was like 6 receivers in that draft class that were all good, but Neighbors is looking like arguably one of the better ones. So that was a good pick on their side. The defensive side of the ball, I feel like they've missed on a few, but I feel like he's done okay in the draft. So like you said, I think if there's a couple more bad years, then he's probably out the door, but they could definitely turn it around.
Injuries have played a big factor, like you said. And if they manage to stay healthy, keep Jackson Dart out of the medical tent, keep these guys who were hurt healthy, including Andrew Thomas, another guy who was a good draft pick by the Giants that has been in and out of the injury, report year after year. If they could get a good season out of a bunch of healthy guys, I think this team could, in what feels like a more wide open NFC East that we've seen in the last couple of years. Maybe in the next couple of years with the right coach, they really could turn things around a little bit, and Joe Shane might just hang on by the skin of his teeth. Well, I think that's enough talk on coaches and front offices for 1 week. We will definitely keep covering all those storylines as they happen throughout the playoffs and into the offseason as well. But for right now, I think we kind of touched on the biggest points. So we're going to jump over, talk about a few other topics, ones that are firing us up a little bit in our rant segment this week. We only got one. I guess it means we weren't so angry this week. Jake doesn't have one. I don't have one. It's really just Drew. And, Drew just decided if he's going to be the only one, he's going to swing for the fences. He's going after the entire U.S. government. Drew, what are you ranting about this week?
Yeah, not about a specific game, not about a season. We're going after the U.S. government, something that was slipped in the big, beautiful bill that I think went under everybody's noses. So I'm not a tax expert. This is not investing advice. This is not please, but by all means, do your own due diligence. But the way I understand it is that typically what you have is that you get taxed on the winnings that you get when you make sports bets. So if you win $100, you're going to pay a percentage of that to Uncle Sam in income taxes. assuming you bet enough, I think there's thresholds involved. Now, with this change, you're going to be taxed on your losses as well. There's going to be a 10% tax on all losses that you make on legal sports books in the United States of America. 10% on bets that are already taking 10 to 15% of VIG when you place them. Well, those minus 110s, those minus 115s are essentially now minus 125s if you happen to lose them. This is fucking unprecedented criminality. I could not believe this Twitter thread that I went down when I started reading about this. Don't fully understand all of it yet. We'll continue to do more research, but I could not believe my eyeballs when I was reading this crap. Unreal. 10% on it, like making a 5% ROI in sports betting is already the most like mind-numbing, most painful thing that you can possibly imagine. And now you're pretty much making it impossible to make money on sports betting. It's essentially what it is. And for that to actually be taking place is just crazy to me. I'll share some thoughts separately with these two about what all my plans are, and being in a specific state that maybe doesn't allow for sports betting. So yeah, I got separate plans for that, but crazy nonetheless. U.S. government, shame on you.
I think we'll leave it at that. I like Drew said, we're not tax advisors. I don't want to give anybody advice on how to handle the situation. I think that there's a lot of options out there. I know, talk about them all you want for a lot of their downsides. I know this is why people are switching to prediction markets, because they're technically not sports betting. They're something else entirely. But again, it did fly under the radar. So if nothing else you take away from this discussion, it's crazy that it's happening. I think that it's kind of attacking a group of people that get a bad rap. We are obviously pro sports betting on this podcast. I think that for whatever reason, people view every sports bettor as somebody who can't control themselves and isn't doing it for fun and are just being taken advantage of, and aren't just doing it as a hobby or even, a partial way to create a little bit of extra income if you are successful at it. I think it's crazy that they're being targeted like this and that it went so far under the radar and just slapped in with a bunch of other stuff. Again, do your own research. Maybe we'll cover it more in the off season. All right, well, now that we got our discussion section out of the way, we're into the best bets segment. A little bit of housekeeping. Going into the playoffs at the end of the regular season, our regular season best bets ended 32, 21, and 1. That's 59.3% year to date. That is a profitable regular season since we started the show. Now, given we did start this show midway through the season, so we're not going to sit here and tell you it was an 18 weeks of profit, but hey, you know what? For what we did give out, we ended up above the Mendoza line. That's a job well done. We'll give a small golf clap for the crew here. And then we're going to move into the playoffs. We're doing best bets a little bit differently. There are not as many games. We're not going to over-index. We're still only going to give things we have high conviction in. So this week, we're going one best bet apiece, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do each week after that to give out our best bets as we lose, games on the slate, and every slate gets smaller and smaller. Before we jump into best bets, though, with the playoffs, particularly the wildcard weekend, I think there are a lot of stats and trends that helped influence the way we bet, and I want to share with everyone in the community before we get into these so you can understand how we're looking at games and maybe hear a thing or two that will maybe change your mind or give you a little bit more of a conviction in a play you have. So I'm going to rattle them off real quick. It's going to be a lot of numbers. I apologize ahead of time, but just want to get these out there so that way we can reference them throughout the rest of the show. First and foremost, wildcard teams that are hosting a playoff game this year but missed the playoffs the year before are 14-30 against the spread. That's 32%. Road wildcard teams entering off of a one-game win streak are 16-4-1 against the spread. And then the next one is home underdogs of 4+ points are 9-0 against the spread over the last 50 years. So what that tells us is not a lot of home underdogs, but it typically is a positive situation when they're catching a decent amount of points. Double-digit underdogs, however, are 1-17 straight up and 5-13 against the spread in the playoffs since 2011. So, more recently, major underdogs, big double-digit underdogs, not looking great at all. This one is interesting because it actually applies to 3 different players this year. Quarterbacks in their first playoff start playing against a team with a quarterback that has already played in the playoffs are 39-1 against the spread. That's 34%, and they're 20-40 straight up. So even if they're a favorite, they're still 20-40 straight up. That applies to Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, and Drake May this year. Teams with a 75+% win percentage are 70-92-3. That's 43% against the spread. That's in the playoffs since 2007. And then finally, one that's the most general play here, but it does apply to every game because there are no indoor games in the first round. Outdoor wildcard weekend games are 49 and 23. That is 68% to the under since 2004. So again, I know a lot of stats will incorporate those into some of the plays we make here, but again, just wanted to throw those out there. That way everyone has those. They can refer to them later on. But without further ado, that'll bring us officially into the best bet segment. I'm done rambling. It's now time for these guys to give out their plays. Jake's going to go first, and wouldn't you know it, the Steelers fan is back in the Steelers once again. Jake, why do you like the Steelers yet again this week?
Yeah, I'm taking the Steelers +3, +3.5, up to 4, depends on whatever it is. I like the Steelers, honestly, money line. I think the Steelers can win this game. I think that the matchup suits us very well. We are a strictly havoc type defense, get a lot of sacks. CJ Stroud does not handle pressure very well. Also, on the other side of the ball, they're the best defense in football statistically, no question about it. Their one major strength is their pass rush. They get a lot of pressure. Aaron Rodgers is the quickest throw in the league. He gets the ball out really quick. He does not like to deal with the pressure. He just wants to get the ball out quick, throw it to his running backs. So he handles that pressure pretty well. The Steelers defense is a very big bend but don't break. But they give up explosive plays. As you notice in the Raven game, the Ravens really only had 3 big offensive plays. The Steelers defense completely shut down a very good defense. It was 3 big offensive plays that all led to touchdowns. Houston is not an explosive play type of team. So I think that the Steelers match up very well against this team. I also said this in the last one, but the under's 39. Playoff games tend to go under, especially games outdoors, as we've already heard. You want the team with points if it's an under. So I like the Steelers in this one.
I reluctantly agree. Yeah, I'll be playing the Steelers in this one. I just think this is a classic case of like everybody's become infatuated with the Texans a little bit too. They've won 8 or 9 in a row down the stretch, and that generally does not fare well for teams coming in on huge winning streaks like that. I don't have the stats right in front of me, but this is a big trends pointing to the Steelers matchup, and Jake touched on a lot of the matchup part of it, like individually about offensive and defensive matchup plus situations for the Steelers. And yeah, I like Rodgers in this one. I think, like Jake said, gets the ball out quick. They lean on the running game, short dump offs. Getting Metcalf back is huge for them. I do think that was the biggest surprise for me last week, was seeing them actually be able to get the ball downfield without Metcalf in the game. But I think he provides a huge boost, and I think we reluctantly are talking about the Steelers for at least one more week.
All right, Jake backing his Steelers one more week, and I don't know if I can guarantee it, but if the Steelers win, I have a strong feeling that Jake's best bet could be next week. But that will bring us to best bet number 2. This one is going to be Drew. Drew also likes an underdog this week. Drew, who do you have for us?
Yeah, I'm taking the Chargers +3.5. I love this bet. I'll start on the defensive side of the ball for the Chargers. So this has been a great defense under Jesse Minter, specifically against the pass. They are top 5 in the NFL at preventing explosive pass plays. That's pretty much everything that the Patriots rely on. They're number 1 in the NFL in explosive pass plays, so it's really a best on best in that situation. I think being outdoor, cold weather, I'd give a little bit of the edge to the Chargers with that one. Patriots cannot run the ball, and that's really where you want to attack the Chargers defense. They give up a ton of rush explosives. They have given up a bit of explosives to quarterbacks that are mobile as well. It's the one part of this matchup that I do worry a little bit about, so watch out for Drake May's legs in this one. You flip over to the offensive side of the ball for the Chargers, you're going to see it everywhere. Obviously, this O-line is atrocious. I'm not going to pretend that they're just going to immaculately turn into even a middling O-line. Both pass and rush blocking is atrocious, but The Patriots defense has been sneaky bad. We've talked about this for weeks. Since their loss of Milton Williams in the middle, their rush defense has taken a big step back, and surprisingly, that's where the Chargers have had the most success, is with rush explosives. So I think you see Herbert getting the ball out quick, you avoid the rush, you try to make some plays in the rushing game, specifically to the tight end. The Patriots defense has been a bit susceptible to that, so I think Gadsden could have a decent game in this one. Outside of that, I do think that I still give the slight edge to the Chargers special teams. I know Dicker's been a bit shaky down the stretch, but I still like him in this one. Pretty even ATS-wise, Vrabel and Harbaugh. Vrabel's 2-3 in his career in the playoffs. Harbaugh 4-1. But I love that stat Cole mentioned. Quarterbacks in their first playoff start have struggled 20, 39, and 1 in their career. I think Herbert picks up his first playoff win in this one. I love the Chargers.
I think this play makes a ton of sense. I will likely be playing it as well. I think that the Patriots, as we talked about all year, are a paper tiger. Drew explained eloquently most of the reasons why. I think the one other thing we have to take into consideration is that we're not quite sure what Drake May is working with as far as his receivers go. I know Stephon Diggs, huge question mark, huge distraction possibly. You don't want to handicap that as a specific element, but I think if you're already leaning the Chargers and you're already not sure what you're going to get out of a first start of Drake May, first year with a new team out of Vrabel, and then now you're throwing in the potential that Stephon Diggs, who knows if he's been around practice, whatnot, kind of worries me too. I think 3.5 is far too many points. I know this Patriots team has blown teams out. They're playing the 32nd rated strength of schedule. So Chargers haven't played a world beater schedule either, but they've at least been in the middle of the league. I think all of that tells me 3.5, too many points. I lean the Chargers as well, and I think Drew is kind of spot on with his handicap here. So that will bring us to best bet number 3, final best bet of the week. It's going to be my best bet. I'm taking the Eagles -4.5 versus the San Francisco 49ers. The reason being, I think this game could look a lot like the Seahawks game. It's going to be low scoring. It's going to be ugly. I think that this Eagles defense is not all that far off of the Seattle defense. 49ers pass defense ranks 23rd in passing yards allowed, 22nd in passing touchdowns allowed, 29th in interceptions, and 28th in completion percentage allowed. That sounds like a great way for Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert to have a nice little get-right spot. On top of that, the 49ers run 75% zone coverage. Hurts beats zone coverage. He's thrown for 2,300 of his yards this year, 70% completion percentage, 7.5 yards per attempt. He's also got 7 touchdowns against zone coverage this year. So I love that matchup for Jalen Hurts to get right. I might even be sprinkling just a little bit on a very crazy bet here, but Jalen Hurts to be the leading passer of the wild card round, because I think there is a potential for them to hit a couple of big plays and chunk some bigger plays throughout the game. And like I said, this Eagles defense, I think, is still a top-tier defense in the league. Now, they might not be the top. I think that award goes to the Texans. I will still say that the Seattle defense is better as well. But I think other than that, I think this Eagles defense is legit, and I think that they can give a lot of the same problems to the 49ers that the Seahawks defense did. So all that considered, and the fact that it's at home, off of some rest for the Eagles, looks like Lane Johnson should be back. I like everything pointing against a team that otherwise has had not a lot going for it down the stretch. A lot of people starting to lose interest in backing this team. I think that they're just a better team in this position. I think everything kind of comes up their way. And unfortunately, a season that could have meant so much more and could have been so much more for the 49ers had they won that division. I think this is the end of the road for them. I think this has kind of been the season from hell in a lot of ways, and I think they probably just go out a little unceremoniously in Philadelphia.
I don't really have a lean on either side in this game. I understand the take with the Eagles. I do think they win this game. But the Eagles are not really a big win by margin type of team, which does scare me a little bit in this matchup because the number continues to climb. Also, one point I would like to throw out there is the one game where the Eagles played a top 5 offense in the league was against the Bears. The Bears came out, thrashed them. The Niners are also a top 5 offense in the league since getting Purdy back. So that does worry me a little bit. Plus, as I've said before, I would lean the under in this game. And in games where you lean the under, you usually take the team that's getting the points. So all that being said, I do completely agree with you. I think the Niners, this is the season from hell. Everybody's gotten injured. They have lived in the blue medical tent. And I think that it would be ceremonious that they, have a chance at the 1 seed, put up an absolute donut, go in and just get dominated by 2 good defenses. So I I do tend to agree with you. I think the Eagles win this. I just don't know if they're going to win by margin.
All right. Well, that'll be all the best bets for this week. We're laying the points with the Eagles. That's my best bet. And then we've got 2 underdogs this weekend. It's a wild card round. Anything can happen. Jake is taking the Steelers. Drew is taking the Chargers. We'll see how those pan out come this weekend. All right, well, now that we're done with the best bets, we're going to hop into breaking down each of the 6 wild card matchups. But first, if you are enjoying this video, please leave a like. Let us know that you like what you're seeing. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell as well so you get notified whenever we put out a new episode. And you can follow our journey all the way through the end of the NFL playoffs and into the Super Bowl and even into the offseason as we can continue to cover the NFL offseason and all of the other sports like college basketball and NBA coming up next. So make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned with us for our journey as we continue through the rest of the NFL season and into the offseason. All right, well, jumping into our previews of the 6 NFL wildcard games this weekend. First, the Saturday afternoon. Somehow, it's not the Houston Texans. I think for the first time in the history of their franchise making the playoffs, it's not the Houston Texans. And that's because we have the Carolina Panthers involved this time around. It is the Carolina Panthers at home playing the Los Angeles Rams. Rams are minus 10.5. The total is sitting at 46.5. They've got a few different ways to play this game. Drew, you have a prop for us. What is it?
Yeah, I like Devontae Adams to score in this game. Looks like he will be playing in this one. Hasn't played since pulling his hamstring in week 15 against, I believe it was in the Seattle game when he did that. I mean, I'm not going to overcomplicate this. This is pretty much all focused on just the sheer volume of red zone targets that he gets in this offense. Total still sitting 45, 46. This is like the one total that I'm not like dying to bet the under, even though it's another outdoor wild card game like we talked about. So yeah, I like Adams in this one. No strong feeling on the total or on either side in this one. 10.5, so a little rich for my blood.
Death, taxes, and a Devontae Adams touchdown. That's Drew's play. Don't fix it if it's not broken. Jake, what are you looking at in this game?
I would tend to lean on the side of the Rams. I would not be surprised if they come out with the belt. The one thing that worries me is I've talked about it a lot. Playoff unders. Playoff games tend to go under, especially outdoors, and you always want the team with points in and under. But this Panthers team has been just hard to watch, and I think the Rams, getting everybody back, they might get that get right spot.
Well, you know what? I've got a strong feeling about this game. I do like the Rams in this game, and I'm not just going to play them on the spread. I'm going to play them on the alts. I want to take the Rams minus 10.5. I want to take them with a minus 13.5. 16.5, 20.5, and all the way up to 27.5. I want to play the ladder all the way to the top on this one. A lot of trends point towards the Rams in this game, as we said. It hits that road wildcard teams off of a 1-game win streak. It hits that wildcard host that missed the playoffs the year before, being bad against the spread. Most importantly, it hits the first playoff start for one quarterback against another quarterback that's had a playoff start. All of those are negative trends against the Panthers. On top of that, as Jake said, this Panthers team hasn't been one of the least inspiring division winners we have ever seen, and that is coming from somebody who bet the Panthers to win the division. Sean McVay did something he's never really done, which is play his starters in a game where he necessarily didn't have to. I think this team is taking it seriously. I think they've got that rematch potential circled with the Seahawks next week. They're going to come in. I think they're going to put up some points early. I think they're going to put up points often, and I think they're just going to send the Panthers home, say try again next year, and I think the Rams are going to run away with it. Like I said, I like all the alt plays, but for sure do like laying the points with the Rams in this position.
I will say the line is kind of telling you something, right? Like, what was this line in Carolina 4 weeks ago? 7.5, 8.5, something like that. And they win the game outright, and now they're 10.5 point underdogs at home. I mean, I don't disagree with that. I think the line is making a statement. The books know generally what's up.
I think if you look at the box score, it is the classic definition of a box score, fraud box score in that game. Other than the fact that I think the Panthers did run the ball decently well, which, okay, that is a concern this time as well. But I believe there was a fumble 6. I believe there was a pick 6. I think maybe a special teams, maybe not a score, but big play in there as well. Ton of hidden yards, all of that stuff. And again, I'm not saying all that couldn't come back to play in this game. Again, I think it's more of kind of a lucky, fluky result. We've seen that a couple times out of the Panthers team this year. Kind of agree with Drew. The line is very telling, especially in a playoff game where you'd expect things would get shorter and they get longer. I agree it is kind of telling. And not that it's the end-all be-all. We have seen some action that has pushed this number. There were 9.5s and flat 10s available earlier in the week. It's now all 10.5s, starting to creep towards 11. Again, I'm not saying that's the end-all be-all, but some people are pushing the line a certain way, and that's for a reason. All right, we're jumping to Saturday, game number 2. This one is a third game of the season between two divisional opponents. This is the Bears and the Packers. This line's been bouncing all over the place. Currently, as we speak, it's sitting at Bears +1, +1.5. The total's around 45.5. Drew, looks like you're leaning towards Green Bay, but you really aren't sure yet. What's your take on the game?
Yeah, it's another one of those. I think everybody and their mother is like, oh, the Packers are dead. They've lost 4 in a row. I get all that. I just don't think that these teams are that different. You go back to both of those games in the regular season, and I thought the Packers outplayed the Bears in both situations. I mean, it took the most Bears comeback of the season, and that's saying a lot, to win that game in week 17, 16, whenever that one was. So I haven't touched this game. I may end up trying to add Packers to a teaser with the Jags or something else. But I know that there's been some sharp movement moving the Packers now to a favorite. It's kind of been bouncing around all week, but there's something about this line that is just, I feel like I'm stepping in it if I go with the Bears in this one.
Jake, you disagree. You're on the Bears.
Yeah, I think that the Bears are the side in this game. I think that if anybody can figure out the absolute stinker they put up against the Packers last time, it is Ben Johnson. I think they're going to come out with a better offensive script in this game. But like Drew said, I think this is a close game. I think the best way to play this, if you don't have a specific lean on either side, is this line's been bouncing +1 on both sides. You know, take a teaser on both sides with another team. I would be shocked if this game did not land within 7 points on either side with whoever wins.
I like the teaser look. I also, like Drew said, I placed a teaser with the Bears and the Jaguars. And if I could get the Packers again at the 1.5, I might jump in on that as well. I think that it is very much a coin flip game. I think the Packers have not looked great. I tend to always believe there's a little bit of an overreaction with those teams, but I tend to favor the home teams in those situations. When it's a team that has to go back on the road, things get weird. My gut feeling, made a small play, says take the Bears in this spot. I think it's the Ben Johnson season. I think that they're due to get a win. I think the city of Chicago, this game's going to be amped up. Home field advantage is not usually a lot in the NFL. I think this could be a decent one. I just like the Bears to maybe edge it out. It's more of a gut feeling for me. I think you could break down the X's and O's all day. We've done it in their other 2 matchups. I notably was on the Packers in one of those matchups. I think that you could break it down 10 ways to Tuesday, and you're going to come out with different reasons to back both teams. Gut feeling here says that the Packers just aren't right. Something's off, and that I like the Bears to get it done. So that's my take on the game. But overall, we kind of have a split. We think it could be a close game. Feels like one of those that really make sure you shop around, find all of the different ways to play this game because of that line movement. You could find yourself in some very opportunistic situations to play this game on either side. All right, that will take us to Sunday, game number 1. This is a big one. This is an interesting one. This is my personal favorite. It is Jaguars at home +1.5 points versus the Buffalo Bills. Total is sitting at 51.5, seeing some 52s out there. Looks like we're in agreement here. We all want to back the Jags in this situation. Drew, lead us off first. Why do you like the Jags?
I like this matchup a lot for the Jags. I'll start offensively. I think this is the type of team that the Bills just did not want to play. Jags tend to be a run first team with ETN, with Tootin, who should be back to set up the pass. Myers has been a huge addition for them, but this rush defense for the Bills has been pretty atrocious all year. And you flip it to the other side of the ball, the Bills have relied on their running attack all season long, whether it's James Cook, whether it's Josh Allen, and that's what the Jags do best. Number 1 defense in yards per carry allowed and limiting rush explosives. I just think this is a really bad matchup. I've thought about taking the Jags in the first half, but Buffalo has been one of the worst first half teams in the NFL. I think they're 4-13 against the spread in the first half. So debating that just in to offset the Josh Allen heroics that could come in the second half. But yeah, I do think the Jags get this win and continue to just prove people wrong. Liam Cohen, Duval, let's do it.
All right. And then, Jake, I know you feel strongly about the Jaguars as well.
Yeah, this is probably my second favorite pick on the board. Like Drew said, I really like the matchup the Jags have. One of the best run defenses in football. The Bills heavily reliant on Josh Allen and the run game. And on the other side of the ball, this is where I actually took a couple extra bets. So I like the Jags plus 1.5. I also really like Travis Etienne to lead the wild card round in rushing yards. Bills have, like Drew said, one of the worst rushing defenses in football. They've given up the most rushing touchdowns too. I've thought about Travis Etienne touchdown. And I also like Parker Washington at plus 2,200 to lead the wild card round in receiving yards. I think he's undervalued. He's had multiple 100+ yard games. I think that the Bills defense has been struggling a lot. It's the highest total on the board. So I really like those plays in this game. And on top of that, with the Travis Etienne look, I like Travis Etienne to lead the playoffs in rushing yards. They play the Bills, and if they beat the Bills, more than likely, unless the Chargers win, they will play the Patriots, who are another team who is bottom 5 in the league at giving up rushing yards. So I would like Travis Etienne in the playoffs, and I think they could win both of those games.
I think that this matchup, if you look at it, other than Josh Allen, I don't see one matchup where I favor the Bills. I really do not. One of the biggest things that these guys didn't touch is the special teams, actually. I think that the Jaguars, particularly when it comes to the kicking game, they have Cam Little, who's been banging 70-yard field goals in warm-ups and can hit pretty much anything inside that in a game. And there's been kicking issues for the Bills. They have been bad in the punt game. They have not been able to generate any yardage, positively on any of their returns. So I think there's going to be a ton of hidden yards in this game. I think that when you look at the pass rush, this Bills pass rush just has not been able to get home on anybody. Trevor Lawrence is so much better when he's not under pressure. And Liam Cohen, offensive mind, I do like Joe Brady. I think he's a good offensive mind, but Liam Cohen has been fantastic. Like I said, other than Josh Allen, don't get me wrong, that's a big ol' if. But I think that this team, this game, you are paying a price to back Josh Allen in this spot. I think that you should probably be catching a couple of points with the Bills in most other circumstances if it wasn't these two names and these two teams. So I like backing the Jaguars here. I did also use them as another teaser piece, as we discussed in our Bears preview, a teaser piece with the Bears. I like that as well if you're looking to play this game multiple ways. All right, we're on to game number 2 on Sunday. This is the Eagles minus 4.5 versus the 49ers at home in Philadelphia. Total has come down a little bit, sitting at 44.5. I best bet the Eagles in this one, so I'm not going to do much talking here. I'm going to let these guys take it. Drew, looks like you're looking at the total. Which way are you going on it?
Yeah, I like the under here. You've seen it come down pretty heavily. So I think it opened 47, 46.5. It's all the way down to 44.5. I still like it there. I also been thinking about the 49ers team total under. That's sitting at 19.5. Yeah, I'm talking myself out of the Eagles, just of worries that they're not able to win with margin based on the way that they tend to play. They'll sit on a lead and just milk the clock with their running game. And the Niners have struggled against the run all year. So, yeah, I lean more towards the total. You see two teams that really struggle to get explosives going. Maybe the Eagles hit a little bit more from the passing side, but I just think this is a tough matchup for the Niners.
Yeah, Jake, looks like you're kind of thinking the same way.
Yeah, I already touched on my thoughts on the head-to-head matchup, but I do think the under is the play. The Eagles have been walking under this entire season with their offense and their defense being one of the top 5 in the league. I think it's going to be classic playoff football where it's just tough defensive battle. Nobody wants to make the first mistake, and therefore it'll sail under that number.
Yeah, I agree with these guys. Obviously, my best bet was the Eagles. I do also lean the under here as well. I think it's a play under. I think that given the Eagles' defensive prowess and their style of play, I think you're going to see low possession. So I would lean the under as well in this game. That will take us to game number 3. It's Sunday Night Football. Kind of a surprising Sunday Night Football. Usually you wouldn't expect to see the Chargers in this spot. but indeed we do, probably being pulled by that Patriots brand a little bit. But nonetheless, it is the Patriots at home -3.5 versus the Chargers, total sitting at 46. And it looks like we've got a lot of alignment here. Drew, you best bet the Chargers. Looks like you want to touch on the total real quick as well.
Yeah, like I said, love the Chargers here, but also love this total. I saw this when it opened and was pretty stunned at how high it was. I think a lot of this is playing into the Patriots and the downfield explosive passing game that they've had most of this season. And I already talked about that in my best bet. I think that gets limited here by the Chargers. This is a team that wants to play ugly. I think their success in this game is going to be on the ground. And if the Patriots want to have success on offense, the Chargers have been willing to let teams run on them at times. So I think you see a bit of a grungier game. I almost made the under my best bet. I love this total as well. So you'll see me on both of those in this game.
Awesome. And Jake, looks like you're in agreement on the Chargers.
Yeah, I really liked Drew's analysis earlier on the Chargers. I think they match up pretty well with the Patriots. I also agree with the underplay. I think these two defenses / offenses kind of like play against each other. They're both very strong passing defenses and very strong passing offenses. So I think that leans towards the under. When you take the under, usually you want to take the team with points. I think that this Chargers team comes out firing. I think Drake May struggles a little bit. It is his first playoff start, and Herbert has experience. So I do like the Chargers in this.
Yeah, I'll make it 3 for 3. I like the Chargers here too. I think 3.5 points. Take that hook gladly. I think that it makes perfect sense, especially when you look at the trends we've talked about a couple of times, but it's that wild card team hosting a playoff game after not making the playoffs the year before. Terrible against the spread spot. Applies to the Patriots here. And then again, we've hammered on it a few times, but quarterback making his first start against a quarterback that's already made a playoff start, not a great ATS spot, also applies to the Patriots and Drake May here. And again, these guys have covered it a little bit, but you got to beat the Chargers by rushing the passer. This Patriots team is one of the few teams in the playoffs that really just has not been able to rush the passer. I think you're going to see Herbert have time. This Chargers intermediate passing game has been one of their strengths. Despite the fact that the Patriots are very good on the outside, have tremendous play out of the corners, their intermediate passing defense has not been great this year. It really has been their weakness of that otherwise very solid passing defense. I think you see a lot of Keenan Allen over the middle. I think you might see Ladd McConkey get going. Look out for Aronde Gadsden. And even Quentin Johnston seems to show up in big moments even when you least expect it. So maybe we see him get one over the top after setting some things up. I think there's going to be opportunities for the Chargers here. I think this one, again, taking that hook makes a lot of sense. I think just it's a little bit too many points. Probably should be closer to 2.5 in my opinion. So I agree with these guys. Let's go with the Chargers. That will take us to the final game of Wildcard weekend. It's the Monday night game. It is the Steelers at home +3 versus the Houston Texans. Drew, I know you mentioned it earlier, but you do like the Steelers here begrudgingly. Why so?
Yeah, I'm in alignment with Jake on this one. I just think that the Steelers offensively are going to be able to negate that Houston pass rush. I think like I talked about, the getting Metcalf back, I think, is huge for them. Opens up that passing game a little bit as well. And you flip to the other side of the ball. Jake touched on it. Stroud against pressure. That's generally how you've slowed him down. You can watch him in that Colts game last week or any of the last 9 wins that they've tallied up. Anytime you don't get pressure on Stroud, he will beat you, and he has the guys to do it. I like both of the rookies that they got out of Iowa State. They've played really well this year, but I think the Steelers create havoc. They get pressure on Stroud, and Houston just can't run the ball. As much as I like Woody Marks and love betting him anytime touchdown when he is healthy, but I just don't think that's going to be the case this week.
I think this matchup, for me, out of any of the 6 matchups this week, is a gut feel play. I really, just looking at it, it's hard to like the Steelers from the analytical perspective. It really is. They don't make any sense when it comes to modern football analytics. They really don't. That being said, just deep in my gut, and maybe it's because I stare at Jake's Terry Bradshaw jersey every week, and I hear him in my ear talking about the Steelers every week, it just feels like a Steelers spot. Mike Tomlin back against the wall. People thought he could be fired. Instead, it ended up being Harbaugh. D'Amico Ryans, CJ Stroud, they're flying high. Big win streak. Everybody loves them. Every year, it feels like there's one of these games. The Texans have found themselves in this role before, being the 4 seed that wins a game against the high-flying wild card. I just think it's the spot. I really do. Monday night, I can imagine Troy Aikman breaking down how Aaron Rodgers makes some throws that turn back the clock by 10 years. TJ Watt shows up, creates the crazy play one last time this year in Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh could very much be on the chopping block next week to go out in brutal fashion, but I think they get it done this week. I really do, and I really can't break it down other than just gut feeling. I've seen this story too many times before, and when you've seen something play out before, it's usually because it's going to happen.
So let's say the Steelers win and the Jags and Chargers win, or maybe the Patriots win. 55-1 Steelers to win the Super Bowl. I don't think it's as crazy as it sounds.
So funny
if they
enough.
get to go to Denver and play Bo Nix.
So yeah, funny enough, before the Raven game, it was 1,000-1. I thought about putting some on it because I looked at the path and I said, like, if you think the Jags can win and the Patriots win, we would play the Texans and the Broncos, which are the two teams that we can actually match up well against, and then it's one game and you're in the Super Bowl. I thought about it.
You have a hedge opportunity. I mean, 1,000's insane for a team that had a chance to make the playoffs. That's fucking crazy. But 55-1, I'm intrigued. That seems high to me. For if you like you laid it out. If the Jags and the Patriots win and you get to go to Denver, I don't know if there's a team that I believe in less in this postseason, maybe other than the Panthers, than the Denver Broncos. So I've seen crazier shit happen.
I want to believe. I don't think I can believe. If there's a way to hedge it off a one win, sure, but I can't believe. I said it before. The gut feeling tells me they're gonna find a way this week. This team is just like, they break your brain when you try to break this team down. Like, they just are not. They're not a playoff team. They're in the playoffs, but they're not a playoff team. And I can't co-sign it. But you know what?
They're
at 55-1,
chaos.
If they're that,
they're an average football team. They're an average football team. All right. Well, now that we have covered all of the NFL playoff games this weekend, we're not done just yet. There's two other pretty big football games being played this weekend, starting on Thursday with the Fiesta Bowl, and then on Friday with the Peach Bowl. Those are the college football playoff semifinal games. We're going to break each of them down for you, give our looks, our picks, and what we're feeling on these games. Starting with that Thursday game, Miami minus 3.5 versus Ole Miss. Total is sitting at 52.5. Drew, it looks like you're leaning towards the Rebs. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I've been flipping back and forth on this one. I have gone with the lean on Ole Miss primarily because I do think that going tempo a bit on offense is going to kind of reduce the impact of Mesidor and Bain on at least getting pressure on Chambliss. So I do think there's a path to success for Ole Miss offense. And I'm just, I'm not a believer in this Miami offense. I know they have had some splash plays and throughout the season mostly with Tony, and found some success with Fletcher in the running game, but I just don't trust Carson Beck. I don't trust Mario in a big spot down the stretch. I think we see more Chambliss magic, and yeah, I like getting over the field goal with Ole Miss.
I agree with everything Drew said. I've been very impressed with the Ole Miss offense, and Trinidad Chambliss. I thought he looked insane against Georgia, and I agree. I think that we are due for a Carson Beck type of big game, and I think that this is the moment that Miami really hasn't played a team with just a true high scoring offense like Ole Miss has, and I think that matches up well with them because the Ole Miss's weakness is their defense, and I think Miami, if they're gonna have to play from behind, I think Carson Beck struggles a little bit, so I really like them in this matchup.
Yeah, I'm going with the total here. I'm going under in this game. I know that might sound a little unconventional, especially because I do also lean Ole Miss, but the reason I am going with the under here is I kind of disagree with Jake's take on the defense a little bit. I think Ole Miss's defense is very underrated. I think particularly when we look at this game and their run defense. Miami loves to run man scheme runs, particularly duo and power, And this Ole Miss defense is very good against man schemes. They've done a very good job of limiting explosives against teams that do that. And that's how Miami's offense has made all of its money in this playoff so far, is by hitting those explosive runs. So I think Ole Miss can slow them down. On the other side, Trinidad Chambliss, he scares me. Absolutely, he scares me. But if there's anybody in the country that's going to be able to get home once or twice, it's going to be Bain, it's going to be Mesidor, it's going to be this nasty front seven for Miami. I think there's enough here. We can keep the game under the total. Even if Ole Miss puts up some points, I think that we can stay under, especially if we get one of those boneheaded turnovers out of Carson Beck. And if we can maybe slow that pace down just a little bit by forcing a 3-and-out here, or, forcing Trinidad into some running scenarios, keep the clock going. I think there's enough here for an under. So I'm going to go ahead and take it, even if it is kind of an unconventional play in this game. All right. And then we will jump to Friday. This is Indiana minus 3.5 versus Oregon. The total is sitting around 46.5. I know it's been kind of taking some steam to the over, so that number could be higher come kickoff. We're kind of split here on this game. Drew, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm starting to lean kind of like I was last week in that Oregon-Texas Tech game. I'm kind of starting to lean Oregon. I've seen, obviously, it's sitting now at 3.5, opened 4, got up to 4.5 early in the week, and there's clearly been some sharp buyback on Oregon in this one. I'm torn. Obviously, everything in my body says don't fade Cignetti. The guy is just on an absolute roll. This team is firing on all cylinders. It clearly didn't, not too big of an impact on their D-line, losing that guy from the celebration after the Big Ten title. But yeah, I don't know. Something about this game, I do think that the matchup favors Oregon a little bit in their passing game, getting some of their receivers back. And Indiana has been a bit susceptible to explosive pass plays. I know that isn't necessarily where Oregon has lived this season. No Davidson is definitely an issue. He won't be in this game due to broken clavicle. But I do think if we get good Dante Moore and he's hitting his young, explosive receivers, I do think we could see a bit of back and forth between him and Mendoza in this one.
Jake, you're on the other side there. What's your take on Indiana?
Yeah, I really think that it's going to come down to coaching at the end of the day, and I think Cignetti is the better coach than Dan Lanning. I think that Indiana, just in general, outclasses Oregon in pretty much all sides of the ball. I think they have a better run game, a better quarterback. I think their defense is better than Oregon. I know they looked good against the Texas Tech team, who's not the best offensive team, but they looked very susceptible against JMU, and I think Indiana can exploit their defense. I really think that this is Indiana's chance to show, like, Cignetti's been the big, he's trying to prove his mark on the game and prove that he is the best coach. He obviously came out to play against that Alabama game. That was, everybody on the podcast was on that side, and it was that was a pretty easy game for them. But I feel like it's really his time to prove, because especially with the Georgia loss and the Ohio State loss, it's kind of like opened the doors for Indiana being the top favorite, and it's really like turned to, now it's Cignetti's championship to lose, and I feel like he's going to come out and he's going to play well. Well, he's obviously not playing, but he's going to coach well.
Yeah, this game gives me big shades of Michigan versus Alabama 2 years ago in the Michigan title run. I think that Alabama team was a lot like this Oregon team, and I think that Michigan team was starkly similar to this Indiana team when we look at the metrics. I think they are very, very similar teams, except for one difference. I think Indiana's got NFL receivers that Michigan didn't. And I think, all of that being said, I'm actually going to play the total, but I'm going to cut the game in half. I want to take the first half under 23.5 in this game. I think we see some feeling out the same way we saw the first time these teams played. I think that both defenses are very stout in the front seven. Both offenses like to commit to the run early. I think Oregon will try to take their shots deep eventually, but I see them both trying to lean on each other, maybe keeping the game a little bit lower scoring. And we know that one of the ways Oregon was able to take advantage of Texas Tech was creating havoc. Well, Indiana doesn't allow havoc. That is just one thing they do not do. Their offensive line is incredible. And then on the other side, I think Oregon can limit the tackles for loss that Indiana was able to generate. I think what we're going to see is a lot of the ground game, a lot of 3-4 yard carries, and then in the second half, maybe things open up a little bit. So I'm going to stick in the first half. I'm going to go under the 23.5. Stick around maybe if you can find that key number of 24, even better. But I like playing the first half under here. I think it's going to be tight. I think it's going to be close. I really don't lean a side strong enough to play either side here. So I'm going to look at this total, and then I'm going to just step out in the second half and enjoy what could be one of the best games we've seen all year. All right, well, those are the 2 college games. We've broken down every big football game being played this weekend. It's going to be one hell of a weekend, hopefully starting with that Thursday game leading all the way through that Monday night game. We're going to recap our agrees and our disagrees. Quite a few agrees, actually. We're kind of in line, which could either be really good or really bad. We'll see how it plays out. We all were in alignment with the Steelers, although me and Drew somewhat reluctantly. But Jake full force on the Steelers on Monday night. We all agreed on the Chargers. Drew best bet them. Jake and I agreed with him. We all like the Jags. No one best bet them, but we all think it's the right look against the Bills. We all had some consensus with the under in the Eagles versus 49ers game. And in those college games, we all were on the Ole Miss side in one way or another. As far as head-to-heads go, we have 2 major discrepancies. Jake and I lean the Bears, and Drew was kind of on the Packers. So if this podcast has had anything, it's been disagreements over the Bears and Packers. Let's have the rubber match here. So we'll see who wins out in that one. And then jumping into the college games on the Friday game, Jake's on Indiana, Drew's on Oregon. I'm just being the coward's way out, taking the first half under so I can watch them battle it out in the second half. But we'll see how that one plays out. I might add that might be my most looked forward to matchup all weekend is that particular game. So super exciting weekend of football. Well, that brings us to the end of the show. We covered every game you need, all 6 NFL playoff games. We gave a best bet each for those games. We covered both of those college football playoff games to get you guys ready for the action starting on Thursday. So if you did like this video, please go ahead and drop a like. If you want to stay tuned for everything we've got coming in the future, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell as well so you never miss an upload. And thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking with us through the regular season and now into the postseason. With that being said, we want to wish everybody good luck on their bets this weekend, and let's have one hell of a 5-day weekend of football.
Let's have a week.
Let's go.